And when no one else remembers, he still carries the pain of an untold story. A boy forgotten by the pages of books, but not by the memory of those who saw him disappear. What really happened that day? Prepare to uncover a truth that no one has ever dared to reveal. Samuel's story is one of those that time seems to have erased, as if it never existed, or rather, as if everyone had forgotten it. In the corridors of history, there are people who remain forever in shadows, whose names are never mentioned, whose faces are not remembered. Samuel was one of those names. Born and raised in a small town in the American Midwest, his life seemed destined to be nothing more than a whisper in the wind, a memory vaguely associated with a common name. It was a cloudy autumn morning, and Samuel walked through the narrow, dusty streets of his city, carrying more than just a backpack on his back. He carried the weight of a story that would never be told. He didn't know this at the time, of course. In his eyes, he was just another 13-year-old boy trying to understand a world that seemed to have no place for him. Samuel lived with his mother, a strong and reserved woman who always worked long hours at a small convenience store in town. His absent father was never mentioned at home, but there was something about his absence that hung in the air like a cloud of uncertainty. However, Samuel didn't care much about that. What really mattered to him was his school, his few friendships, and the small, simple dreams he nurtured in his young mind. But that year, something different was about to happen. Something that would change not only Samuel's life, but the history of the entire city. That day, Samuel was late for school, as usual. He ran through the streets, the sound of his boots echoing against the walls of the houses. The school was only a few blocks away, but, as always, he preferred to cut through the park. The park, with its old trees and empty benches, always offered him a sense of relief, a refuge from the routine. However, that day, the park was different. There was something unsettling in the air, something that couldn't be explained. As Samuel walked through the park, he saw a man standing near one of the benches, staring intently at him. The man didn't seem to be passing by. He was standing there, observing him with a disconcerting intensity. Uncomfortable, Samuel decided to quicken his pace, but the man called out to him, "Hey kid, have you ever wondered why nobody talks about you?" The question hit him like a punch to the stomach. Samuel stopped instantly, his body paralyzed by the strange sensation of being watched in an almost invasive way. The man, with a serious expression, took a step forward. Samuel didn't know what to answer, so instead of speaking, he just shook his head, a sign of confusion. The man smiled slightly, but it didn't seem to be a kind smile. "You're not here by chance, boy. History will swallow you whole if you don't do something about it." And with those words, he disappeared among the trees. Samuel stood there, frozen, trying to process what he had just heard. He didn't know it, but at that moment his life was about to take a turn he never imagined. The mystery surrounding his own name was only beginning. He tried to ignore the encounter, but something inside him told him he couldn't. The man's words echoed in his mind, a constant reminder that something was amiss. Even as he walked into school, the thought of that encounter haunted him. He wasn't the only one with something to hide. The whole town was shrouded in secrets that would never be revealed. The town of Eldridge was a simple place where everyone seemed to know everyone, but at the same time, nobody really knew anybody. The houses, built of aged wood and with slate roofs, were scattered along narrow, well-kept streets. The park Samuel had crossed was a meeting point for the older residents, but not frequented by many young people. The town's children, including Samuel, preferred to stay away from the adults and their endless conversations about the past. The convenience store where his mother worked, Sullivan's Market, was the heart of the town. Everyone passed through there, and conversations abounded about the most trivial matters. However, there was a secret lurking within the market's walls, something Samuel had never known until that moment. The store was the town's unofficial meeting point, and during the quieter hours, his mother would always whisper to some of the older residents. Samuel never quite understood it, but he sensed that something didn't fit into the simple explanations his mother gave. Samuel's relationship with her was distant, but not cold. She had always loved him, of course, but the loneliness of the job and the long shifts at the store had created a distance he never knew how to bridge. She, like him, seemed to be hiding something. There was a shadow that haunted her eyes, a furtive glance whenever someone mentioned Samuel's father's name. Samuel had never known much about his father. He had simply disappeared before Samuel was born. His mother had never spoken much about him, except for the occasional distant story she would mention on rainy days, when the wind battered the windows of the house. To Samuel, his father's name was an empty word, formless and meaningless. He never knew if it bothered him or not, but over the years he had learned to live with the absence. The few times Samuel brought up the subject, his mother would look away, and he would quickly stop insisting. It wasn't something she wanted to discuss. He, in turn, came to believe that the best thing was not to question it too much, unless it was absolutely necessary. This led him to a feeling of detachment, not only from his mother, but from everyone around him. He felt like a misplaced piece, without a place in the city's great puzzle. At school, things weren't much different. He wasn't popular, but he wasn't invisible either. He was somewhere in between, part of the class without being the center of attention. His classmates saw him as someone who didn't stand out, but who also didn't cause problems. He was there, and that seemed to be enough for them. But Samuel didn't want to be just enough. He wanted something more. Maybe he didn't know exactly what it was. Samuel's life seemed to follow a predictable routine, but the events of that day in the park were about to disrupt everything. During the weeks that followed the strange encounter, the boy tried to return to his routine, but the seed of doubt had been planted in his mind. He couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious man and what he had said. "History will swallow you up if you don't do something about it." The words echoed in his mind, fueling a growing sense of anxiety and confusion. What did it all mean? Samuel's life up until then had been like any other boy his age. School, friends, the search for approval, and the desire to understand the world around him. But suddenly, he began to realize that his life wasn't as simple as he thought. Something else was at stake, and he didn't know exactly what. At school, the atmosphere no longer seemed as familiar as before. His friends, who had once been companions in playful banter and carefree conversation, now seemed distant and uninterested. He, who had always been quiet and observant, began to feel an invisible weight on his shoulders. Something was wrong, but he didn't know how to define what it was. That's when he started noticing the stares. People looked at him differently, as if they knew something he didn't. When he crossed paths with some adults on the street, he noticed their faces close up, as if they were keeping a secret. It was as if he were a ghost, present but invisible, excluded from some larger narrative, something no one wanted to discuss. The night after their meeting in the park, Samuel woke up in the middle of the night, as if an invisible force had called him. He sat up, confused, his heart pounding in his chest. He looked to the side, expecting to see his mother awake, but she was in her room, as always. He felt the urge to go to the market, as if something were drawing him there. When he arrived, the light was on, and a solitary figure stood in the background. It was his mother talking to a man. What Samuel saw that night changed everything. He'd never known how to explain it, but it was like a sudden revelation. The man was speaking softly, and although the conversation was whispered, Samuel could make out the words. "It's time he knew," the man said. "He can't remain a ghost." Samuel's mother seemed hesitant but replied firmly, "He's not ready. You know that." Samuel stood frozen in the doorway, paralyzed by surprise and the tension in the air. What was happening? Why did his mother seem so nervous? Who was this man, and what did he mean by those words? Before he could process any more, the man turned and looked directly at Samuel. His eyes were piercing, cold, and Samuel felt a chill run down his spine. "You're closer to the truth than you think," the man said, before turning and disappearing into the night. Samuel stood there, completely speechless. What had he just heard? His mind was in turmoil, and he felt that now the game had changed. From that moment on, he would no longer be a passive observer of his own life. He needed to understand what was happening. In the following days, his mother's behavior became even stranger. She no longer seemed like the calm and composed woman she had always been. There was a tension about her, as if she were on the verge of revealing something she would prefer to keep buried. Samuel tried to ask, but she avoided the subject with the same speed with which she had evaded it in recent years. The truth seemed to be right in front of him, but he didn't know how to reach it. However, one thing was clear. His life, or what he thought he knew about it, was about to be turned upside down. As the days passed, Samuel realized that something was deeply wrong, not only with his mother, but with the entire city. He began to piece together a puzzle that didn't seem to fit. People, though kind and polite, avoided certain topics when he was around. The story of his father's disappearance, a subject never discussed, seemed to have more layers than he had imagined. The more he tried to uncover the truth, the more isolated he felt, as if he were trying to discover something he shouldn't. Looking back, he remembered the small clues he hadn't paid attention to, the way adults exchanged furtive glances when talking about families or absent fathers, the subtleties in conversations that always seemed to avoid his father's name. Even the few friends he had at school seemed distant, as if they knew something was wrong but didn't dare ask. Everything started to make sense, but the deeper he delved into his discoveries, the more out of place he felt. The mystery seemed to engulf the entire city. There was a silent conspiracy affecting everyone's lives, but no one was willing to reveal the truth. One day, Samuel decided to venture even deeper. He followed his mother to the market after she closed the doors, his curiosity guiding him. To his surprise, she entered an old warehouse at the back of the store, a place he had never seen before. He hid behind a wooden barrel, observing from afar. Inside the warehouse, he saw his mother in an intense conversation with the same man he had met in the park. He approached cautiously to listen. They were speaking softly, but Samuel managed to hear enough to understand that his mother was trying to protect him from something. The man, in turn, insisted that Samuel needed to know the truth as time was running out. "He's getting too close already. We can't let him find out on his own," the man said, his voice cold and impersonal. "You know what that means, don't you? If he finds out the truth, there's no going back." Samuel's mother seemed desperate. "I know, but he's still so young. He can't carry that burden. He's not ready to understand." Samuel stood there, incredulous, his heart pounding in his chest. What was his mother hiding from him? What did she mean by, "he's not ready"? Was it the truth about his father's disappearance, or was there something more, something darker that he didn't yet understand? While he was lost in thought, the man suddenly turned and, as if sensing his presence, fixed his eyes on him. "Do you really want to know the truth?" he asked, his voice now laden with a menacing tone. That penetrating gaze made Samuel instinctively recoil. He knew he had crossed a line he should never have crossed, but at the same time he couldn't go back. Curiosity, mixed with a growing feeling that he was being manipulated, compelled him to find out what was really going on. That night, Samuel had a nightmare. He saw himself running down a dark, endless corridor, with doors closed on both sides. Every time he tried to open a door, it slammed shut in his face. He could hear footsteps behind him, but when he looked, there was no one there. The feeling of being followed and pursued was so strong that he woke up with a muffled scream, sweating profusely. The dream, or nightmare as he preferred to call it, seemed to represent his life in recent days. A series of closed doors, secrets kept behind impenetrable walls, and a feeling of being watched at every step. But by whom? And why? The next morning, Samuel woke up determined. He could no longer live in ignorance. Something was being hidden, and he had to find out what it was, no matter the cost. He knew it would mean challenging everything he knew, everything he believed to be true about his life, about his mother, about his past. But now he was ready to face whatever it was. That afternoon, something changed. Samuel was tired of being a spectator to his own life. He could no longer ignore the signs, the clues that appeared so fleetingly and enigmatically. He needed answers. He couldn't continue living in the dark, surrounded by secrets that seemed to multiply every day. It was during a rainy afternoon, while he was sitting on a park bench, waiting for the rain to pass, that everything unfolded before his eyes. He hadn't expected to see the man again. In fact, he had decided he wouldn't look for him anymore. But fate, as always, had other plans. The man appeared out of nowhere, like a shadow materializing in the rain. Samuel saw him in the distance and for the first time didn't back down. He was tired of running. The man's words still echoed in his mind. "Do you really want to know the truth?" Samuel knew there was no turning back. The man approached slowly, as if he knew exactly what was going through Samuel's mind. He stopped in front of him, his eyes fixed, almost defiant. "So you've decided. You're ready to see what's been hidden from you." Samuel didn't know if he was ready, but he knew he had no other choice. "What's happening? What are you trying to tell me? Why is my mother hiding this from me?" The man looked around, making sure no one else was nearby. "Your mother has reasons to protect you, boy, but you deserve to know the truth. Your life, the life of everyone in this town, has never been what it seemed. You are connected to something much bigger, something that no one in Eldridge has ever dared to touch." Samuel felt a chill when he heard those words. He knew he was about to discover something that would change everything, but what he couldn't imagine was the magnitude of the revelation he was about to hear. "What do you mean?" Samuel asked, his voice low, almost inaudible due to the weight of anxiety that gripped him. "For years," the man began, "your father wasn't just another ordinary man. He was part of something much bigger, something that spans generations. Eldridge isn't just any town. There's an ancient history buried in the foundations of this town, and you, Samuel, have a role that can't be ignored." Samuel felt his heart race. "What does this mean? What's happening to my mother and to my father?" The man took a deep breath, as if preparing himself for something difficult to say. "Your mother never wanted you to know. She feared it would destroy you. What she's been hiding isn't just about your father. It's about what happened to him and to you, Samuel. Your destiny isn't what you thought it was. You were chosen, and what you discover now may change everything you believed about the world." Samuel was stunned. Chosen? For what? The man took a step back, looking intently at him. "It's not just about you. It never was. But if you don't understand what's at stake, no one in Eldridge will be safe. What began with your father is coming to an end, and you are the key to it." It was then that Samuel realized he was at the center of something much bigger than he had imagined. His life, which until then had seemed normal, was about to be turned upside down. Whatever this destiny the man had mentioned was, he would have to face it head-on. The man, with an enigmatic smile, turned to leave. "The truth is in your hands, Samuel. Only you can decide if you're ready to face it." With that, he walked away, disappearing into the darkness of the night. Samuel stood there, paralyzed, not knowing what to make of the words he had just heard. The truth, whatever it was closer than ever. He looked at the cloudy sky, trying to process everything the man had told him. His mind was racing, trying to make sense of every word. But deep down, one thing was clear. He could no longer turn back. The truth was calling him, and he knew there was no way to ignore it. The next morning, Samuel woke up with a strange feeling that something important was about to happen. He didn't know exactly what, but he felt deep in his stomach that the revelation of the previous night had changed something inside him. He was no longer the same boy he had been before. Doubt, fear, and curiosity were now part of his daily routine. As he went downstairs for breakfast, he found his mother with her back to him, preparing a simple dish. She didn't look at him, as if she were waiting for him to be the first to speak. Samuel sat at the table, watching her with a mixture of distrust and frustration. He knew his mother was hiding something, but he had no idea how to get the truth out of her. The man's words echoed in his mind. "You are the key to this." "Are you all right?" his mother asked without turning her head. Her voice was calm, but there was something in her posture that made Samuel feel she knew something was about to change. She knew he was different, that he was no longer ignoring things. "I know you're hiding something from me," Samuel said, his voice firm but trembling. "What's going on? What are you hiding? What did the man in the park mean?" The question hung in the air, heavy and laden with unspoken meaning. His mother stopped stirring the pot and turned slowly to face him. Her gaze was weary, as if she were fighting an internal battle. She sighed, moving away from the table to sit in a nearby chair. "I knew this would happen someday," she murmured. I just didn't want you to know, Samuel. It wasn't your time." "Wasn't it my time to find out what?" Samuel asked, his impatience beginning to show. "Why did you hide all this from me?" She looked at him, her eyes tired and full of sadness. "Because what you're going to find out isn't just about you. It's about all of us, and I didn't want you to carry that burden. I didn't want you to be involved." Samuel approached her, feeling the anguish growing in his chest. He had never seen her so vulnerable. She had always been the strong, unbeatable figure, the person who protected him. But now she was breaking down, and that scared him even more. "You are part of a story that began a long time ago," she continued, her voice almost breaking. "A story that no one ever wanted you to know. Your father, he was involved in something much bigger, something that involves this city, its residents, and now you." His mother's words were like an electric shock. Samuel felt a wave of understanding and at the same time immense anger. He had been deceived all along. His entire life, his identity, everything he believed to be real was crumbling right before his eyes. "You need to understand, Samuel, that the choices you make now will affect everyone's future. Eldridge's future, Upper family's future, your father's future," his mother said, her voice low, as if she were telling a forbidden story. Samuel stood silently, digesting those words. What did it mean? What should he do with the truth now? He knew his mother was trying to protect him, but at the same time, he felt he could no longer live with this weight on his shoulders. He had to understand everything, or else he would be lost in ignorance. "I can't go back, Mom," Samuel said, the firmness in his voice intensifying. "I need to know the truth, and I will find out, with or without your help." His mother looked at him, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't avoid his gaze. She watched him, with the same fear he felt, but also with the acceptance that there was no turning back. "You'll have to face this alone, son," she replied. "I can't protect you from everything." The air between them grew heavy, as if an invisible barrier had risen. Samuel no longer knew what to think. His mother's words echoed in his mind, but he couldn't grasp the full extent of what she was saying. What was so big and so dark that she could no longer protect him? At that moment, he knew that something in his life had changed forever. There was no going back. He had a mission, a quest for the truth, and now he had to face whatever the reality was. Behind everything his mother and the city had hidden, the weight of the truth was beginning to sink in on Samuel. The city, his family, his own past. Everything seemed to be a web of lies and omissions, and now he was trapped in it, with no way out. What he knew was that he couldn't turn back. He had decided he would go all the way. In the following days, Samuel distanced himself from his friends, immersing himself in his research. He spent hours in the city library, poring over old files, newspaper records, history books, trying to find something that would explain what was happening. But the more he searched, the more lost he felt. The clues were always incomplete, fragments of information scattered everywhere, but nothing connected. The feeling of being closer to the truth, but unable to reach it, was like a poison slowly poisoning his mind. That's when he had an idea. If no one else was willing to help him, he would need to seek answers elsewhere. He couldn't count on his mother anymore. She had already made her choice, and he respected her decision to keep him away from the truth. But Samuel knew he didn't have any more time. Something was approaching, something he could no longer ignore. Determined to go it alone, he went to the old warehouse at the back of the shop where his mother worked. It was a place he had never been before, but it seemed to be the only way out. The door was locked, but there was no one around. Samuel looked around, feeling his nervousness growing. He forced the door open with a piece of metal he found on the floor. The door gave way with a low creak, and Samuel went inside. Inside, the air was heavy, as if the place had been forgotten for years. The wooden floor creaked with every step, and dust settled in. He looked closely, going from room to room, until he finally found something that made him stop. There was an old locked chest in a small room, hidden in the corner. Samuel felt a chill down his spine as he approached. He knew it was important. He knew that whatever was inside would be the key to everything. With some effort, he managed to open the chest. Inside, he found a series of aged papers and objects that seemed to be from another time. At the bottom of the chest, however, something stood out: a photograph. The image showed his father, young, at an event that clearly did not belong to the town of Eldridge. He was surrounded by people in formal attire, in a place that seemed to be some kind of secret ceremony. What caught Samuel's attention, however, was not the photograph, but what was written on the back of it: "The truth will emerge, and the future is in your hands." The words were clear, and although he didn't fully understand their meaning, Samuel knew at that moment that the town of Eldridge was deeply connected to something hidden, something his father had been involved in. He couldn't ignore it. He could no longer be the innocent child who believed in fairy tales. The anger and frustration he felt began to transform into determination. He was no longer lost. He knew what he had to do: unravel the mystery that had been imposed upon him, even if it meant facing his greatest fears and confronting those who preferred to keep things buried. Samuel looked at the photo once more. His father's serious expression seemed to stare directly at him, challenging him to move forward. The weight of responsibility now seemed clearer than ever. But he was ready. He wouldn't back down. The path ahead was far from easy. He knew he would face obstacles, that people would try to stop him, that his own mother might reject him even more when she found out what he was doing. But he also knew there was no turning back. He was destined to discover the truth, and now he was beginning to realize that this might be the only path to his own liberation. With the trunk now closed and the photo kept with him, Samuel felt a change within himself. He was no longer the victim of his own story. He was the author, and from that moment on, he would write his own destiny, confronting the mysteries and secrets that had been kept in the shadows for so long. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions and impulsive actions. Samuel felt he was approaching something bigger than he could ever have imagined. With each new discovery, a new piece fit into the puzzle. But with that came more questions, more unanswered enigmas. He knew he was one step away from something monumental, but what exactly it was, he didn't know. After finding the photograph and documents in the trunk, Samuel began making connections between his father's past and the town of Eldridge. He delved into historical accounts of the town, discovering that for decades there had been a secret society operating under the radar, with influence in various spheres of power. His father had apparently been part of this society. But what exactly did this society want? What was its true purpose? And more importantly, what was Samuel's role in all of this? The pressure began to affect his life in unexpected ways. His friends started to notice that something was different. Although he had tried to keep up appearances, his erratic behavior and sleepless nights began to raise suspicions. He avoided social interactions, no longer went to school with the same enthusiasm, and spent most of his time locked in his room or in the library. The city, once peaceful and quiet, now seemed like a labyrinth of secrets he could no longer ignore. Samuel knew he needed more information, but the city was becoming more hostile every day. People began to distance themselves from him, and he could feel the weight of their stares. He could no longer trust anyone. Even his mother, who had once seemed to be his only safe haven, now seemed more distant. Every time he asked more about his father or what he had really done in the city, she became more withdrawn, turning into a silent and absent figure. During one of his nights of investigation, Samuel found a crucial clue. While searching through an old diary belonging to his father, he discovered a reference to a place called the Portal, something that had been carefully hidden among the yellowed pages. The portal was mentioned in several entries, but never directly. It seemed to be a secret meeting point, a place where the most important decisions were made. But what really happened there? Was it there that the fate of Eldridge and his own family was being sealed? That night, he decided he would go to the so-called portal. He didn't know exactly what he would find, but something inside him told him that this was the key to unlocking everything. He knew it was dangerous, that he was going beyond the limits of what anyone could endure, but there was no turning back now. He had a feeling that if it wasn't now, he would never have another chance. Samuel armed himself with the photograph of his father and the documents he found in the trunk, carefully stored in a backpack. It was the first time he had felt a true sense of purpose in his life. He was no longer chasing after vague answers. Now, he was going straight to the heart of the truth. He didn't know what awaited him, but he knew that something inside him was about to change. As he approached the entrance to the place where the portal was supposed to be, an old abandoned building on the outskirts of the city, a feeling of tension enveloped him. The air was heavy, as if the space itself were guarding secrets it didn't want to reveal. He looked back, hesitating for a moment. Perhaps it was too late to turn back, but he couldn't give up now. The truth was right ahead. The biting night wind whistled through the cracks in the building, and the shadows seemed to move strangely, as if the place itself were alive, watching him. Samuel took a deep breath, adjusted his backpack, and went inside. Inside, the silence was absolute. The sound of Samuel's footsteps echoed off the empty walls. He began to descend a spiral staircase, feeling a growing sense of claustrophobia. The further down he went, the more he felt he was heading towards the center of something dangerous. He could hear his own heart pounding, as if it knew something was about to happen. Reaching the bottom of the stairs, he came upon a huge iron door. The door was locked, but as he approached, something inside shifted, as if an invisible energy had been released. Samuel placed his hand on the doorknob, feeling a momentary resistance before the door slowly opened, revealing a dark room, illuminated only by a faint pulsating light in the center. It was the portal. Whatever it was, whatever was waiting for him there, Samuel knew the truth was about to be revealed. Samuel stood before the portal, the place he believed to be the key to finally understanding what was happening. The air seemed dense and charged with a strange energy, and the room before him, illuminated only by a faint, pulsating light, appeared to be in total silence, waiting for him. His heart racing, he hurried inside, his footsteps echoing off the empty walls. The door slammed shut behind him with a metallic sound that reverberated through the room. He was trapped there, but that was exactly what he wanted. The answers were within his grasp, and he couldn't turn back now, not now. The room was simple, but there was something profoundly unsettling about its design. The center was empty, except for a stone table with ancient symbols carved on its top. Around the table, 4 chairs were arranged, all facing the center of the room. And there, in one of the chairs, sat a figure Samuel never expected to see, his mother. She sat silently, her eyes fixed on the floor, seemingly lost in thought. Samuel felt a lump in his throat at the sight of her, as if everything he knew about her was about to crumble. He approached slowly, the weight of the situation becoming clearer with each step. You knew about this?" Samuel asked, his voice trembling. The feeling of betrayal consumed him from the inside. Her mother looked up, their eyes meeting for the first time since it all began. She didn't answer immediately, but her expression spoke louder than words could express. It was as if she were grappling with the decision she had made years ago. Finally, she sighed and stood up. "I knew this day would come," she said, her voice deep and heavy with sorrow. "I tried to protect you, Samuel. I tried to keep you away from all of this, because what you're about to discover is not something anyone should have to bear." Samuel felt a tightness in his chest, confusion growing. "But what is this, Mom? What were you and my father involved in? What's going on here?" She paused, and for a moment Samuel thought she was going to say something else, but she simply turned and pointed to the stone table. "Look at this," she said softly. "Everything you need to know is there." Samuel, his heart pounding, approached the table. When he looked at the symbols engraved on it, he felt a tingling in his fingers. It was as if these symbols were familiar, as if he had seen them before somewhere. He began to examine each one, and as he did so, he felt a surge of memories he didn't know he possessed. "These symbols," his mother said, "they are ancient. They are part of a secret lineage that has existed for centuries. Your father was involved in it, Samuel, and now you are too." He looked at her, perplexed. "What do you mean? What do you mean by that?" His mother approached, her gaze now more intense. "You are the successor, the lineage your father left behind. Everything he did, all the secrets he kept, are now in your hands." Samuel was beginning to understand, but he still couldn't process everything. Successor? For what? What's going on in Eldridge? His mother took a step back, as if preparing to say something that would change everything. Eldridge isn't just any town. It's built on something much older, something that goes back to the founding of this country. And you, Samuel, have a vital role in its continuity. Samuel looked at her, feeling a chill run down his spine. "I don't understand. What is this city really? What did my father do?" She hesitated before finally speaking. "Your father was a guardian. He protected the secrets of Eldridge, the secrets you must now protect. The portal is the key to everything, the truth your city hides, and what you must do with it." At that moment, Samuel felt a force within him, a strange energy that seemed to be connected to the city and to all the mystery surrounding his family. He knew he was about to make a decision that would affect not only his life, but the fate of everyone around him. "You have two options," her mother said, with a grim look. "You can take your place as guardian and protect Eldridge's secrets, or you can destroy everything and free the city from its shackles. The choice is yours, but know that each will come at a cost." Samuel looked at the stone table again. He knew he was at a point of no return. Whatever this secret bloodline was, he was now bound to it. But the truth lay before him, and he knew he could no longer ignore it. He took a deep breath and looked at his mother. "I choose," he said, his voice firm. "I choose to face this. I choose the truth." His mother watched him with a mixture of pride and sadness. "So, let Eldridge's fate be sealed." The light in the room began to shine intensely, the symbols on the table pulsing as if they were coming to life. The portal had finally opened, and Samuel knew his life would never be the same. Samuel felt as if time had stopped. The pulsating light around him seemed to intensify, as if the city itself were breathing through him. The portal had opened, and with it, an immense weight fell upon his shoulders. He was no longer merely discovering the truth. He was now deciding the future of Eldridge, of his family, of his own life. The feeling of power was overwhelming. He didn't know exactly how, but now he understood. What his mother had said about his father, about the role he was meant to play, wasn't just a story of ancient lineages or secret societies. It was about destiny, something that couldn't be avoided no matter how hard he tried. He had been chosen, but at the same time, a sense of loss overwhelmed him. He had lost his innocence, the simple and peaceful view he had of his city and his family. What he had discovered was not only the truth about his father, but the truth about the world itself, a world that was far beyond what he had imagined. Samuel looked at his mother, who was now standing, looking at him with a mixture of pride and sadness. She knew what he had to do, and he knew it too. Whatever this responsibility was, he had to bear it now. He couldn't run away. "Eldridge needs you, Samuel," his mother said, her voice low but heavy with weight. "Now, you're the guardian, and with that comes a responsibility none of us can bear for you. The future of the city, and yours, depends on your choices." Samuel stepped forward, feeling that, at that moment, he truly took ownership of his destiny. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew he could no longer live in the shadow of his ignorance. He would need to be strong, stronger than he had ever thought possible. With one last glance at his mother, who now seemed a distant and untouchable figure, he turned to the stone table and the ancient symbols. He knew what he needed to do. He was ready to assume his position, not as a victim of an imposed destiny, but as someone who now had the power to shape it. The light in the room began to dim slowly, but the feeling of change, of something monumental about to happen, still hung in the air. The portal was open, but Samuel didn't know if what he had unlocked was a new beginning or an end to something far greater than he could ever comprehend. He approached the table, his fingers touching the symbols engraved on the stone. A wave of energy coursed through his body, and he knew with overwhelming certainty that he had made the right decision. The future was now in his hands. As he walked away from the portal, he felt the weight of the world, but also an unexpected freedom. He knew that the city, his city, was about to change forever. He also knew that somehow he would have to lead that change. But the story of Samuel and of Eldridge was not over. Now it was only the beginning. Time passed, and Eldridge was never the same again. The city streets, once calm and peaceful, were now charged with a new and enigmatic energy. Samuel, now a young adult, walked those same streets with a serene but determined expression. He knew the weight of his responsibility would never fully dissipate, but he also knew he was fulfilling his role. His father's legacy and the secrets buried for generations were now under his care. As time went on, people began to notice that something had changed in Eldridge. Some said the town was more alive, more vibrant. Others, more skeptical, feared that secrets hidden for so long would finally come to light. But Samuel didn't care about what others thought. He knew the future was uncertain, but he was ready to face it head-on. As he watched the city from a distance, the weight of his decision seemed a little lighter. He had chosen the truth, and with it he had freed himself. He didn't know what would come next, but he knew he would no longer be alone. Eldridge and his story were now irrevocably intertwined. What would you do if you were in Samuel's place? Would you take control of your destiny or try to escape the truth? Eldridge and Samuel's story doesn't end here. The future is full of possibilities and mysteries. What awaits him? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to follow more stories like this. Your journey is only just beginning. What would you do if you were in Samuel's place? Would you take control of your destiny or try to escape the truth? Eldridge and Samuel's story doesn't end here. The future is full of possibilities and mysteries. What awaits him? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to follow more stories like this. Your journey is only just beginning.